no problem. Well, I guess thanks everyone for coming. I'll just pop over to the welcome slide and hand over to you, Al. Just kick things off.
Morning, everybody. My name's Al Emery, Managing Director at Momentum Software Solutions, and welcome to our online event this morning. Often Momentum are talking about our ERP solutions, and today we're talking about a solution that's very much complementary to what we do and what you do as businesses using ERP software. And it's very much targeted in the accounts payable space, which is a very important part of any business. Doesn't generate revenue, but is a significant source of correct capture of costs, and therefore is something that needs to be very, very accurate, as efficient as possible, and also prevent additional risk to your business. In recent times, fraud has become more and more prevalent, especially capture of documents that are sent to you by email, then edited and sent to you. That has been a common source of fraud, where businesses inadvertently pay a fraudster to the wrong bank account. So there's a lot of risk if your accounts payable is not managed well, and the risks can be loss of money, like fraud, incorrect reporting of expenses, and even incorrect reporting of inventory valuation and cost of sales. So there's a lot of at stake to do it well, and solutions that help you achieve that and digitize it are definitely worth looking at. So that's why we wanted to introduce TRAILD to you today. That's their speciality. So I'm going to introduce Mark Stafford from TRAILD, and he's going to explain to you the sorts of things that TRAILD can do to help you with your accounts payable and risk management.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Al. Appreciate the little take through there. And look, before Adam jumps in and gives a live sort of run through on how TRAILD hooks into MyHub Advance and how it'll help make the AP easier and more secure, I just want to take a moment and really emphasize some of those problems that we can help with businesses like yours. I always like to start with a global truth that hopefully we can all agree on, and that's that paying bills is a drag, and paying business bills is even worse. There's more of them, they're more complex, and let's just say not everyone in the business gives them the same attention as the finance team, CFO, or managing director. So just for a quick story, a large agriculture business over in WA who supplies chicken and that sort of thing to Coles and Woolies, who, spoiler alert, they're now using TRAILD. They had hundreds, if not thousands, of invoices coming in each week, and they had a dedicated AP clerk because their process was manual. The reason for manual seemed sound. They wanted to slow down the process, make sure everyone was diligent, and make sure there wasn't any unnecessary leakage through lazy approvals or error. But here's how each day went. A stack of invoices would come in, the clerk would sort through them, check against a purchase order if there even was one, make sure there was a purchase receipt. Some of them match, some need approval, and some are completely off and need to go back to the supplier. Forward on the invoice to the divisional heads, then mark the important ones as urgent. Then follow up on last week's invoices. Find that, despite clear requests, most haven't been actioned, so send out reminders and then notice how many pay on time discounts have just been missed. But the job's not done. On to the approved invoices. These still need to get into the system, so grab them one by one, start punching them in, hoping you're doing it accurately, but quickly, but accurately. Tag up the supplier, make sure the details haven't changed, make sure the payment terms are your payment terms, not the supplier's requested terms, connect the purchase order, upload a copy of the invoice, all done so quickly, now you're worried you haven't done it accurately. So ask a teammate to sense check it. Finally, ready to make payment, prepare the payment file, spot check the payment file, authorise the double signatory and get it paid, hopefully before the late fees kick in. What a process. Now, if that sounds like an exaggeration, a recent AP Now survey found that 71% of all businesses are having issues either with slow invoice approvals or issues with their purchase order matching. And a staggering half of all businesses are still entering their invoices manually. Now, the straw that broke the camel's back for our Aggie friends over in WA was when they unknowingly processed a $20,000 invoice that had been compromised on the way into the business. In the overwhelm of that manual process, things got missed, checks dropped off, and their process actually worked against them. By the time they had realised the error, the funds had been transferred overseas multiple times and the money wasn't coming back. Some of the stats are eye-watering. And again, business email compromise isn't uncommon, even in the isolated lands of Perth. And while companies like Coles, Google and Facebook, who've all had incidents, can absorb the loss, for smaller companies, it's not that simple. In Australia alone, the cost of invoice fraud and business email compromise in the last reporting period was an estimated $896 million, with only 1 in 7 businesses actually reporting their incident. The average amount stolen per incident was $100,000, so the impact is significant. Now, banks are known for stopping and reimbursing even the smallest amounts of fraud on your credit cards, but when it comes to your business payments, those costs sit solely with you and your business. It is understandable that many businesses try to protect themselves through manual review and approvals, but this is slow, time intensive, and where mistakes get made and missed. With more and more incidents occurring, it pays to be proactive in protecting the business well before it getting anywhere near making those payments. And as Adam will take you through now, we believe that TRAILD can help manage that balance between AP efficiency and the payment security. Over to you, Adam.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Everyone, I'm going to take you through the TRAILD platform now and show you and explain how it works seamlessly with MyHub Advanced. So as you will be able to see on my screen, this is the TRAILD in tray. So this is the sort of home of everything to do with accounts payable when integrated with MyHub Advanced. There's a couple of ways to get your supplier bills directly into the system. You can have them auto forwarded in through your email configuration, and they'll just land in the system waiting to be actioned. You can upload them in the front end using the big green button where you can upload PDF, JPEG, PNG files, and so forth. In this example, I'm going to use the simple drag and drop function where I'll get a preview of the associated supplier bill and I can upload that simply into the system. What the system is now doing is it'll use its OCR technology to extract all the key information from the supplier bill. And once it's completed, it'll land as the latest invoice in the list. It generally takes about 5 to 10 seconds. You can see this one's already completed and it's extracted all the key information. So the invoice number, purchase order number, supplier name, invoice date, due date, the amount, and it's auto-assigned it to whoever's forwarded the supplier bill into the system. So you can then, as the AP team or the clerk, simply drill into your supplier bill. And what you'll be able to see is you'll be able to see the original PDF copy from the supplier on the left-hand side, which is quite visible. You can also append and upload any additional documents that may need to be passed through as a part of that approval process in the system. And you can also see all of the extracted information. So the supplier information, tax invoice information, and pricing information has all been extracted and pulled out of that invoice that's been sent through from the supplier. One thing I did want to show is just in terms of the extraction, you do have the ability to adjust the different fields if for whatever reason you needed to adjust it from a machine learning perspective. It will learn the adjustment that's been made by the clerks. And the next time that supplier bill comes in and they've adjusted, for example, the invoice number location, it'll pre-populate the associated information on next time that the next supplier load. So basically the machine learning element of the OCR technology will get better and better over time. Generally on first supplier bill, you're looking at 89% accuracy, but by the third supplier, second or third supplier invoice, you're looking at 99% plus accuracy in terms of the extraction and also the machine learning element of the product. You can see also here for many of you that do use purchase orders, it will actually pull the purchase order number off the invoice. And what you've got the ability to do is it does link into the purchase order and receipting module in MyHub Advanced to look for any associated purchase order that's related to off the invoice. So you can see in this example, it's pulled off the purchase order. There is an approved purchase order in the system. It's showing me the receipt number that the goods have been receipted, which is fantastic. I can see the receipt line, the part number, the description, the quantity, the unit price, and the total. I can simply select my associated purchase order and I can add it in. What it's going to do at that point is it's going to pre-populate all of the associated information. So the description, quantity, unit price, the total, the associated tax categories, divisions, GL codes, sub-accounting, it's all going to be linked. And obviously it's checking for any associated variance as well. So if there's a discrepancy between the purchase order and the supplier bill that's come in, it's going to be flagged as a part of that review process. So let's just say a supplier sent us bill through for $805. It's come up with a $200 variance showing a $200 $100 variance from the purchase order that needs to be investigated before this gets processed for payment. So it's just a level of additional protection there. At this point, I've got the ability to select, anyone in the organization I want to send it to. So whether I want to send it to Mark, I might actually just send this one to myself, and I'm going to submit this invoice for review and approval. Now, once I submit this, you will actually see it has auto-approved. And the reason this is auto-approved is because the purchase order does match the supplier bill and the goods have actually been receipted. So there's no need to go through an additional approval workflow for the ones that simply match. Now, if you don't use purchase orders or have a variance, it will need to go through the approval workflow. So I'm just going to go back in, remove this purchase order. And show you what it would look like for example, a utility or gas or rent bill that comes in. So I'll select my associated GL code, my sub account, and I'm going to submit that in for review and approval without a purchase order. And you'd see what it would do now. So now it goes into a pending review state because it doesn't match, and obviously there's no purchase order associated with it. So in this example, what would happen is I would get a notification in my invoices tray. So I'd get an email to say, hey, Adam, you've received 2 new invoices, one from Acuity Accounting and Advisory, one from Kingfisher Electrical and Cabling. One's come up as low risk and one's come up as high risk, and I'll talk to the risk algorithm and the factors it looks at in a minute. But I can easily drill down and view these invoices and go through my approval process. So what I'll be able to see as the approver is I'll be able to see within full context the original PDF document or supplier invoice document. I'll also be able to see any additional files that have been appended by the AP team. So I've got full context as to any other information I need to review. I can see all the extracted information. So the supplier information, tax invoice information, and the pricing information is all visible as a part of that approval. And I can simply approve, reject, or skip this invoice. Now, in this example, it has come through as a low risk invoice. And what that means is our risk algorithm is looking at a number of different factors to determine what's normal for that supplier within the context of your business, but also what's normal for that supplier in terms of the context of every payment that's gone through the platform. So in this particular example for Acuity Accounting, it's saying the supplier average over a 12-month period is $12,300. This supplier's sent us an invoice through for $605. It's within the complete normal supplier spend, and everything else looks completely fine. I'm going to approve this invoice and get it exported to MYOB for payment. Then what it's going to do is it's going to automatically take me to the next invoice in my tray. So this is an example of a high risk invoice. It's come through from a regular supplier of ours, Kingfisher Electrical and Cabling. It all looks perfect in terms of the actual template and the supplier information. But what it's picked up in the algorithm, it said that there's a payment details problem and that the payment details have changed. So what it's saying here is that the BSB and account details on the supplier bill are different to what's in my supplier master data in my ERP system. And second to that, it's different to what I've paid this supplier historically based on previous invoices. So that's the first major concern. And that's where the protection against business email compromise or invoice manipulation is picked up by the system prior to it actually making it anywhere near your accounting system for payment. Now, it's also picked up that there's a pricing concern. So it says that it exceeds the supplier maximum. So the supplier average for this supplier over a 12-month period is $1,375. This supplier has sent us a bill in for nearly double the normal supplier average, so a material increase in the price. And, between the payment details problem and the excess supplier charges, I'd be, either rejecting this and sending it back to the AP team, or I could pop a comment in here and say, hi, Mark, this looks odd, please check it. And I could put a comment in, and I could even delegate it across to Mark or someone else in the business to be able to follow up for that review process and understand what's gone on with that particular supplier. So that's basically the role of the approver done. I've got no more invoices in my tray. My role is complete for now. Once the invoices have been actioned, the clerk has the ability to view all of the invoices in the system at any given period of time. So they can see who they were uploaded by or who they were forwarded into the system by, what division or branch they're related to. So if you are using multiple branches, multiple divisions, you'll be able to clearly see where they've been allocated and who they've been allocated to. And you'll also be able to see where the invoices are at in their life cycle. So whether they be pending a review, one's still sitting with Michael, I need to nudge that along and mark it as urgent, or or drill in and say, put in a comment, say, hi, Michael, can you please action this? I've got the ability to do that. I can also see all of my approved invoices and all of my rejected invoices. So most of the time I'm going to be dealing with my approved invoices because these are the ones I want to export to MYOB. I can see my associated risk score. I can either select all of them as a batch and export them to MYOB as a release bill, or I can select them individually, the ones that I'm actually comfortable with, and I can export them across. So that's the automation, I guess, the three-way matching in terms of the purchase orders and the approval workflow. Once that's all been completed in TRAILD, what you've got the ability to do, and you should all be very familiar with this MyHub Advanced screen, but in the bills and adjustments section, once you press export, the bill will actually automatically feed into MYOB. It's going to send through the original PDF document in MYOB, as well as any additional documents that have been appended by the clerk as a part of that review and approval process. It's also going to send through really really important fields. So it's going to send through the TRAILD risk score on export from TRAILD into MYOB. So that's the things looking for change of bank details, urgent payment requested, payment terms, things that are abnormal for what you would normally do with that supplier, and also who's actually done the approval. So you've got a timestamp and an audit trail of who's accountable for that approval, as well as obviously any invoices that have been auto-approved by matching to a purchase order and also making sure the goods have been receipted. So that's how the process looks inside of MYOB. But I can imagine many of you, once the bills are in MYOB, you go through, you prepare your payments, you release your payments, and you generate your ABA file. At this point, what you've got the ability to do is a final sense check at the point of payment. So back in TRAILD, what will happen is in the payments tab, the file will automatically appear in TRAILD as a feed from MYOB, but you can also upload the ABA file on the front end. And what it's going to do is it's going to do a final check on the batch run to say, of this $40,000 payment value that I'm about to run in this batch, $30,000 has come up as a problem. And what I can do is I can simply drill down into my ABA file. And what I'm going to be able to see is every single aggregated supplier payment that I'm about to make, broken down supplier by supplier. So I can see, for each supplier, Southwest Express, Qantas Airways, how much I'm about to pay them, what my normal payment history and trend is, and any associated risk warnings within the context of my business. Now, in terms of innovation data and digital, for example, we also have a verification process that looks at the supplier ID and identity of that supplier, not only just across your business, but across every other payment on the platform. So we look at, a number of government data agencies like the Australian Business Register, Crime Stoppers, and so forth, to be able to verify the identity of that supplier across the platform. So in most examples, like Qantas Airways, verified by TRAILD, paid many times on the platform before with these banking details. They're completely verified. But for your business specifically, you've never flown with Qantas before. They're a new supplier for you. Just something to be wary of before you process and make the payment. In most cases, obviously, it's going to be completely fine, but this is a rare example. But innovation data and digital, it's come up as an unverified supplier. No one on the platform has ever paid this supplier with these banking details before. The banking details are also different to what's in your supplier master data and MYOB. They're not registered on the Australian Business Register, and they're not registered for GST. So this is an example of one that could have come through business email compromise, has been approved as a high-risk invoice where someone hasn't paid attention and actually been picked up by the CFO before the payment's actually made. So there's two levels of intersect, one at the point of review and one at the point of payment, just to be able to sense check everything before things are processed. In most cases, as you can see here, it's ranking the highest risk ones to the top or any ones with problems to the top, but these are all good. They're no risk, verified by TRAILD in terms of each of these aggregated payments. I can come in here, I can mark my file as paid and download my file from our encrypted platform to load into the bank for processing. Now, most of the time, depending on the way that your finance teams work, you can have your finance team do an initial check on the file once it's brought in from MYOB, just to sense check and make any adjustments accordingly. Depending on the size of your business, sometimes the CFO will want to be the last person that gets notified to come in here, check everything's all good, and load it into the bank and know that they're the last person to touch it. It's been verified and checked by TRAILD before processing for payment. So that's most of the solution across the AP automation, the three-way matching to automating bills through when there's purchase orders, the approval workflow being digitized, and also the cybersecurity protection at the point of payment. So in that sense, Mark, I might hand back to you just to run through the ROI benefits of an AP automation tool like TRAILD.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate that. So look, the ROI benefits of AP automation are actually relatively simple. The ATO has done some research And they've worked out that it costs about $27 to $30 to process a PDF invoice manually. And that's taking into account, staffing costs, processing time, data entry, and so on. We've worked out that with TRAILD, the savings is approximately about $20 per invoice. So the average business processing 300 bills per month would save an estimated $72,000 per year in those overhead costs by automating the process. And so what that's all about is really spending that valuable time, rather than spending on manual back-end process, use TRAILD to free up the time so that ultimately that can be invested back into the business and ultimately help grow the business with more efficient use of that time. Now, if that wasn't enticing enough, of course, as you know, coming onto this webinar, there's a special offer for Momentum customers with the first month free. Before we jump to giving you that month, what we'd get you to do is simply reach out either to Al or myself, and we'll tee up a quick catch up just to understand your business and your instance specifically, and show you how TRAILD would work for you specifically. And then if that all makes sense, the turnaround time, it's relatively plug and play as a MyOb add-on. And so, we can look to have you up and running within sort of a 1 to 2 week time frame. Brilliant. So that's TRAILD from top to bottom. Al, we'll have a look now and see if there's any questions that have come up or anything particularly in there that people wanted to know more about.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark and Adam. And I think that was a really terrific overview of what TRAILD can do. And in particular, it shows how seamless the integration with advanced ERP is. So transactions are moving through in real time. Nobody needs to touch them. And so it makes for an elegant solution. I might preempt a couple of questions apart from any that people on the session might ask. So what's involved in getting set up and running with TRAILD?
Yeah, it's a great question, Al. I might jump in on this one. So to get configured, it's all about understanding your process and sort of tailoring the solution around it. To get set up, generally what we do is we want to train the system based on what's normal within the context of your business from a risk perspective. But basically, it's very much plug and play. So it's really simple to get integrated and up and running. It's generally, 1 to 2 weeks, as Mark would have mentioned before. But it's all around just understanding how the configuration wants to be set up in terms of your approval workflow. And also your process around the checks and balances and how that would fit in terms of a timely process prior to processing payments. Okay, and can we just also clarify that TRAILD, for example, handles inventory-related accounts payable invoices as well as non-inventory? Yeah, great question. So it does relate to stock and non-stock items. So any supplier bills that come through for stock or non-stock, if it's stock related, it can handle it. If it's non-stock, it can also handle it. The most important thing with stock invoices is if you are using purchase orders and you need to adjust and write back to the purchase orders in TRAILD, you can also do that. So you can adjust for quantities. You can adjust for information on the purchase order. When it's submitted and exported back into MYOB, it makes the associated adjustments when that bill actually lands. So it's all very much deeply integrated with MyOb Advance in terms of the configuration. Okay, that's a good point actually, because we have had customers look at other solutions where they were somewhat more rigid in terms of being able to manage or adjust quantities or what had been receipted. So if there was a difference between the PO or the receipt and the invoice, that would get written as a purchase price variance, whereas it could have just been an error in receipting. Yeah, that's absolutely fine in TRAILD. You can make those adjustments accordingly, and you'll see sometimes that happens, and that's why I didn't take you in too much detail on the purchase order linking aside from adding in the purchase order, but you can actually add in purchase order lines at an individual level. So you may receipt different items on the purchase orders at different times, and therefore you're dealing with split purchase orders and split bills, and that's able to be very easily accommodated in TRAILD by that simple selection, and you can also have instances where you've actually got POs but you haven't receipted the goods yet, and the supplier bill comes in. You can still do that two-way match, but it is going to flag that the goods haven't actually landed in the warehouse yet. Something to be wary of before you process the payment, because you would want to receive the goods before processing in most cases.
Okay, and if I'm a project business or I'm in construction, will it handle invoices that relate back to a project or a project task?
Yes, I didn't go into that in detail either. I should have. Apologies about that. It does. So you've got the ability to allocate projects and project tasks to every supplier invoice, both at a header level and also a line item level. So if you needed to split out a particular supplier bill that came in by different projects on a line level, you can also do that, and even send them to a different general ledger code, tax category, and so forth. So that's all able to be allocated live and integrated with MyHub Advanced in terms of your existing coding. So it seamlessly integrates back when you add a new field or project in MyHub Advanced.
Okay, and there's a question in the chat from Robert. So the question is invoice date versus posting period. So scenario is an old invoice is sent, so it might be dated in a prior month, but would like it posted in the current month.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've had it across a few clients that we've got on with MyHub Advanced. We've actually got a configuration that will automatically pick the next open period if the period is closed. So what it'll do on export is it'll try and post it to the current period on the invoice date. If it can't actually post it, it'll automatically select the next open period in MyHub Advanced to have that pushed into. So that's the way the configuration works on the back end. But yes, it's absolutely smart enough to pick up the next open period.
Okay. And I'll prompt another question. Is there a minimum number of invoices per month that would, I guess, make it worth the investment in TRAILD?
There sort of is, like, I mean, businesses doing less than sort of 75, 80 invoices a month, it's sort of where it starts to get, if anything over that volume is sort of the right sort of market for an AP automation tool. If you're doing sort of 50 invoices per month, depending on how much time you're spending, keying in data and matching to purchase orders and doing manual variance checks and so forth, it could be valuable to you. But generally, where we see the maximum amount of value is with businesses over sort of 80 invoices per month in terms of what they're processing. They get the full ROI benefit of a solution like TRAILD.
Yeah, we do have a couple of instances where there are some businesses that use TRAILD that have a lower invoice volume, but their interest is more from the supplier validation and the security checks because they have a lower volume, but they have a higher dollar amount on those payments as they're making them. So there are some that use it if they're below that amount, but certainly, as Adam said, with that balance between the dollar amount and the invoice volume, that's sort of where we see it.
Okay. And is it an option to use the fraud prevention and not the AP automation? I mean, I couldn't think of why you might, but some, I guess it might come up.
We have had a couple of clients actually, Al. It's a good thing to bring up. We do have a protect package that just looks at the cybersecurity component of the product, so the final ABA file check on every payment file that goes through the platform as a part of that. And the reason being is that some clients will have 4 invoices or 5 invoices a month that they process, but they're for a material amount. They're $250,000 an invoice or $500,000 an invoice, and they want to make sure that supplier is aligned to what they would expect to pay them in terms of the pricing frequency. And also in terms of the actual banking details that they process. So yeah, there is an option to split it out, and we do have a separate protect package just for security, and then obviously the full solution across the automation and the security.
Okay, that's good to know. And I guess the final one for me is handling foreign currency invoices.
Yep. So we do deal with foreign currency. So the foreign currency is linked to the supplier card in MYOB. So when you set up a supplier with a foreign currency in MYOB, or that supplier currency will be pre-populated in TRAILD when the supplier bill comes in. So whether it be USD, Euro, whatever it might be. And then what will happen is when it gets exported from TRAILD into MYOB, it'll push that currency across as a part of the integration.
Right. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat, and I think we've moved through the presentation at a pretty good pace, but I think it's given ourselves and the customers that are on the session a great overview of the type of capability that TRAILD can bring. I know that Momentum already has a number of customers using TRAILD, and the feedback's terrific. On the solution itself, but also the how quickly and efficiently the setup and implementation has gone.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Al. And the one thing I just wanted to mention as well before we obviously wrap up, it's very important for us to understand the existing process. That's where you see, I mean, off the back of this, if it is something that you're interested in looking at in terms of improving your AP components, it's very important for us to be able to have a chat with you in detail, get an understanding of your process to see how we can wrap it around your existing operations to make it more efficient and also more secure to see the full benefit of the solution. Perfect. Well, that's most of it from my side. Anything else from you, Al?
No, that's great. I appreciate everyone taking the time and jumping on.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Adam. We do have a number of people who registered who perhaps didn't attend the event, but the plan is to make sure that they receive a copy of the recording, and if they have any questions, they can reach out to us or yourselves. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.